On the way home from a big Easter family party in Charleston when I was 16, I got into a really bad car accident on I-26. The doctor said I needed surgery right away, or I might not survive. My mom and my little sister were at a fancy spa that afternoon. The hospital called my mom on speakerphone. I could hear her say, "If she doesn't make it, just tell me later. I'm in the middle of a treatment, and I'm not signing anything right now." But before I continue, hit the subscribe button and tell me where are you watching this from, and what time of day is it? My name is Aurelia Vane, and now I'm 21. 18 days later, I finally woke up. At the foot of my hospital bed, the chart had been quietly changed. My mom was no longer my legal guardian. Someone else's name was there instead. And that new guardian was, well, someone who really cared. Someone who stepped up when my own mom didn't. I promise, the story gets even crazier after this. Let me tell you how everything started. I grew up in a big white house on James Island, just outside Charleston. My dad died of leukemia when I was 6. One week he was teaching me how to ride a bike, and the next week he was gone. After the funeral, the only person who still came every weekend was my mom's dad, Grandpa Thaddeus Vane. Everyone knew him as the old police chief who never really retired. He just stopped wearing the badge and started fishing and sitting on his porch swing. He would drive up in his old Ford pickup truck, bring me shrimp and grits from his favorite place on Shem Creek, and let me sit in the front seat while he told stories about chasing bad guys on back roads. To me, he wasn't just Grandpa Thaddeus. He was simply Grandpa, the one grown-up who always cared. My mom, Celia Aurelia, was sad for about a year. Then she met Lucian Thane at a charity event downtown. Lucian owned lots of new houses on Kiwa Island and drove a black Range Rover that smelled like new leather. 2 years later, they got married in a big beach wedding. I barely remember it. 9 months after that, my little sister Haven was born. She was blonde, loud, and instantly the center of attention. Suddenly, our house had a nursery, a nanny, and a bunch of new rules. My bedroom was moved to a tiny room over the garage so Haven could have the big room with the balcony. My soccer trophies were put into boxes. My mom started introducing me as the older daughter, instead of my name, like I was just an extra in someone else's family pictures. By the time I turned 14, I was basically invisible. Lucian paid for everything, but he never looked at me unless I was in his way. Haven got new clothes every season, and I got hand-me-down school uniforms from a school I didn't even go to. The only place I still felt wanted was Grandpa's little brick house in West Ashley, 20 minutes away across the Ravenel Bridge. He kept my old bike in his garage, kept the freezer full of popsicles, and never asked why I spent every free weekend there. Easter weekend when I was 16 was supposed to be different. Grandpa threw his big yearly cookout. There were 3 long tables under big oak trees, low country boil, decorated eggs, and sweet tea in mason jars. Cousins I hadn't seen in years came to visit. There was music, kids running everywhere, and the smell of charcoal in the air. I wore the pale yellow sundress Grandpa bought me because he said it matched my eyes. For a few hours, it almost felt like the old days, like I still belonged somewhere. Then I overheard my mom on the phone by the dessert table. She was laughing, telling someone she and Haven had booked a mother-daughter spa day the next morning. Facials, massages, the whole thing. And after that, they were flying to the Bahamas for spring break. Just the 3 of them. My mom, Lucian, and Haven. My name came up. I stood there holding a plate of banana pudding, feeling it go cold in my hands. I told Grandpa I had a headache and needed to go home early. He tried to argue, but I could tell something was wrong. I just wanted out. He handed me the keys to the 1998 Jeep Wrangler he helped me buy with my summer lifeguard money. "Drive carefully, baby girl. Text me when you get there," he said. I promised I would. It was already getting dark when I hit I-26 westbound. Spring rain came down fast, the way it does in the low country. Windshield wipers went full speed, but couldn't keep up. Traffic slowed down. I turned the radio up loud to stay awake. Some old country song Grandpa loved was playing. Headlights blurred into streaks of white and red. I never saw the big truck until it was too late. The driver hydroplaned, jackknifed across 3 lanes, and smashed into the driver's side of my Jeep at least 60 miles per hour. Metal screamed. Glass exploded. The world flipped twice, the roof caved in. Then the Jeep finally stopped upside down against the median. I remember my seat belt cutting into my shoulder, the taste of blood, the sudden silence, and then nothing at all. Somewhere far away, sirens started screaming toward me. The emergency room at MUSC was total chaos. Doctors shouted codes. Monitors screamed. Someone kept yelling for more O-negative blood. They wheeled me straight into Trauma Bay 1. My clothes were cut off. Needles went into both arms. Tubes went down my throat. A surgeon in blood-covered scrubs leaned over me and said, "My pelvis is shattered, spleen ruptured, bleeding inside the skull, and she has less than an hour before it's too late." They needed parental consent to take me into surgery right away. A nurse with kind eyes held up my phone and called my mom on FaceTime. The call connected to the third ring. I could hear spa music and the low hum of massage chairs. My mother's face appeared with a sheet mask on and cucumbers over her eyes. Haven was sprawled on the table next to her, earbuds in, scrolling TikTok. "Mrs. Thane, this is Nurse Maris at MUSC Trauma," the nurse said, angling the camera so Celiora could see my face covered in blood with a breathing tube. "Your daughter has been in a severe accident. She has life-threatening injuries and needs surgery immediately. We need your consent now, or she may not survive the next hour." Celiora peeled one cucumber slice off and squinted at the screen. Haven pulled an earbud out and leaned over to look. The doctor stepped in. "Ma'am, she has multiple fractures, internal bleeding, possible brain swelling. We must operate immediately." Celiora sighed like someone just asked her to move her car. "If she doesn't make it, just call me when it's over," she said flatly. "I'm in the middle of a treatment, and I'm not driving all the way downtown to sign papers." Haven let out a short, sharp laugh, covered her mouth, and took a screenshot of my battered face. Later I would learn she captioned it in her group chat. The nurse's hand trembled holding the phone. A doctor muttered, "Jesus Christ." Someone whispered, "Get that recorded." The nurse tried again. "Ma'am, this is a legal requirement for a minor." Celiora cut in. "Call my father, Thaddeus Vane. He'll handle it. We paid for a full day here." Then she ended the call. The trauma team stared at the blank screen. One resident looked ready to throw the phone across the room. They scrolled to the next emergency contact, Grandpa. His old Ford pickup was already on the road when the hospital called him. He had been sitting on his porch cleaning shrimp for tomorrow's supper. The second he heard I was critical, he dropped everything and floored it across the Ashley River Bridge, still wearing rubber boots and an apron stained with fish blood. Rain hammered the windshield. Lightning lit up the sky. He made the 25-minute drive in 16 minutes. He burst through the ER doors soaked to the bone. His old police badge from 30 years ago was still clipped to his belt out of habit. The charge nurse took one look at him and waved him straight through. He signed every consent form they shoved in front of him without reading a single line. His hand shook so hard the pen scratched the paper. They let him into the bay long enough to see me. Tubes everywhere, face swollen beyond recognition. He leaned close to my ear and whispered the same thing he used to say when I had nightmares as a little kid. "I've got you, baby girl. Grandpa's right here." Then they rushed me to surgery. He pulled a metal chair up to the glass wall outside the operating room and sat down. He didn't move for the next 9 hours. Not when the nurses offered coffee. Not when the waiting room emptied. Not even when the storm outside knocked the power out for 12 minutes and the backup generators kicked on. When they finally wheeled me to the ICU just before dawn, he followed the bed, still holding my cold hand that had gone limp hours earlier. He never left my side. He slept in a chair, eating cold hospital food, rubbing my hand to keep me warm. He told me stories quietly, like he used to when I was a little girl. He promised that no matter what, he would protect me. That day, I learned what real love looked like. Even though my mom had walked away, Grandpa never gave up. He was there when I screamed, when I cried, and when I finally opened my eyes. He reminded me I was still important, still loved, and still part of a family, even if it wasn't the one I was born into. The next 18 days were the longest days of Grandpa's life. The ICU smelled very strongly of antiseptic, the clean, sharp medicine smell, mixed with something that smelled like worry and fear. Machines hissed and beeped constantly, in a rhythm that never stopped. It felt like they were reminding everyone that the line between life and something much worse was very thin. Grandpa claimed the old vinyl recliner next to my hospital bed and refused to leave, no matter what anyone said. The nurses tried to send him home on the first night. They said, "Sir, you've been here all day. Maybe you should rest." But Grandpa pulled an old badge from his wallet, the one from when he used to be a police officer, and held it up. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, his voice quiet but firm. After that, nobody argued. He slept in very short bursts of just 30 minutes, his head leaning back, mouth open, boots still on. When he was awake, he talked to me without stopping. His voice was soft, low, so the loud machines wouldn't drown him out. Grandpa told me about the night I was born, how he had held me first because Mom was too exhausted. He told me about the summer I was 8 when we caught a 5-foot shark off the Folly Beach pier. I screamed so loudly until he let me reel it in myself. Grandpa read aloud from his worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, and he even did all the voices for each character, just like he used to when we were driving in the truck. Some evenings he didn't read. He just hummed an old hymn that his mother used to sing when he was little. It was the same song that always helped me fall asleep on his couch when I was younger. Doctors came and went like the wind through the hallways. One morning, the neurologist said that the swelling in my brain had gone down. Another afternoon, the orthopedic surgeon warned that my pelvis might never heal straight. Grandpa listened carefully, nodded, and asked sharp questions that even made the younger doctors nervous. Then he went right back to holding my hand like nothing had changed at all. On day 16, my numbers finally started getting better. My blood pressure stayed steady. The ventilator, the machine that helped me breathe, needed less help. One of the nurses saw Grandpa smile for the first time in 2 weeks. That same afternoon, while he leaned close and whispered that the red fish were running and that we would go fishing the minute I woke up, a tall man in a navy suit appeared at the glass door. It was Mr. Cashin. He had worked cases with Grandpa 25 years ago, and they still played poker together once a month. Grandpa looked at Cashin, saw the folder in his hand, and gave one slow nod. No words were needed. Cashin left the hospital, got into his silver Lexus, and drove straight to James Island. He knew the house by heart. Celiora and Haven were in the foyer, surrounded by fancy luggage. 2 matching pink suitcases sat by the door, already tagged for a 7-night Royal Caribbean cruise leaving Charleston Harbor the next morning. Lucian was upstairs on a work call. Haven was spinning in a new sundress, recording herself for Instagram. Celiora was checking the passports one last time. The doorbell rang. Cashin introduced himself and handed over a thick envelope. He waited quietly while Celiora tore it open. Inside were 2 sets of papers. One was an emergency petition to take away parental rights for medical neglect. The other was a civil lawsuit filed by the hospital for the money spent saving my life and for the pain and suffering caused by the neglect. Both Celiora's name and Haven's name were on the papers because Haven was 14 and had helped with the refusal of treatment. Celiora's face went white under her spray tan. Haven stopped spinning. "You have 72 hours to respond," Cashin said, calm and steady. After that, the judge has already AG-thaned to an emergency hearing. Celiora started yelling about lawyers and mistakes, saying, "How dare anyone question my parenting?" Haven cried, claiming she didn't mean anything by her texts. Cashin simply turned and walked back to his car. Inside the house, Celiora slid down the wall, clutching the papers. Her mascara ran in black rivers down her cheeks. Haven kept screaming that this would ruin her spring break. Lucian came downstairs, took one look at the documents, and went pale. Back at the hospital, Grandpa never mentioned the visitor. He just kept holding my hand, humming that same old hymn, waiting for the day my eyes would open. 2 days later, I opened my eyes for the first time. Everything hurts. My mouth tasted like metal and plastic. The machine still beeped, but softer now. The first face I saw was Grandpa's. His eyes were red, his beard rough, and he was grinning so wide I thought his cheeks would split. "Hey, baby girl," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Welcome back." I tried to speak. Nothing came out except a rasp. Grandpa pressed the call button, then lifted the whiteboard at the foot of the bed so I could read it. In big black letters it said, "Legal Guardian Thaddeus Vane." I stared at the words until they blurred. Tears rolled sideways into my ears. Grandpa wiped them away with a thumb that still smelled faintly of shrimp and salt air. Over the next few hours, between nurses checking vitals and doctors shining lights in my eyes, he told me everything. The FaceTime call. Mom's exact words. Haven's screenshot. The papers served while I lay unconscious. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He never had. I cried again, harder this time. Not from pain, but from relief so deep it felt like drowning in reverse. 3 weeks later, they let me go home. Not to James Island, but to Grandpa's little gray house on stilts in Folly Beach, 15 minutes south of the city. The salt air hit my lungs the second he carried me over the threshold. My new bedroom used to be his fishing tackle room. He'd painted the walls pale blue and hung the same wind chimes we had made when I was 9. From the window, I could see the ocean rolling in steady, endless waves. Physical therapy started the following Monday. I learned to sit up, then stand, then shuffle behind a walker while Grandpa spotted me, like I was 2 years old again. He cooked shrimp and grits every night, because it was soft enough for my wired jaw. We watched the sunset from the porch swing, his arm around my shoulders. Neither of us needed to fill the quiet with words. One afternoon, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was Mom. I stared at it for 10 rings. Grandpa watched from the doorway, saying nothing. I pressed decline, set the phone face down, and went back to the porch. That was the only time she ever tried to contact me. Across town, Lucian filed for divorce the same week. His company had just landed a massive contract with the Port Authority. The last thing he needed was headlines about child abandonment tied to his name. He moved out of the James Island house before the ink dried, taking only his clothes and golf clubs. Haven lost her mind on social media for about 3 days, then went silent when colleges started pulling scholarship offers. Grandpa never brought it up unless I asked. When I did, he answered straight. They made their choice, Ren. Now we make ours. Some nights the pain woke me screaming. Grandpa would shuffle in wearing his old police academy sweatshirt, sit on the edge of the bed, and hold my hand until the medicine kicked in. Other nights I woke to him praying out loud in the living room, voice rough, asking God to give him enough years to see me whole again. By the time the stitches came out and the casts turned to braces, I could walk the length of the pier without stopping. Grandpa bought 2 rods and a bucket of shrimp. We sat at the end where the water turned dark green, not catching much but not caring. The sun burned the last of the hospital smell off my skin. I looked out at the horizon one evening, wind whipping my hair across my face, and realized I wasn't waiting for anything anymore. No apology. No explanation. No second chance. I never wanted to give. The ocean just kept moving, same as always. A couple of months later, the preliminary hearing day arrived. The courthouse on Broad Street smelled like old wood and floor wax. I walked in on crutches, Grandpa on one side, Cashin on the other. My mother sat at the defendant's table in a navy suit, 2 sizes too big, eyes puffy, no makeup. Haven slouched beside her in a private school blazer, staring at the floor. The judge was a woman with steel-gray hair and 0 patience. She adjusted her glasses and told the bailiff to roll the recording. The FaceTime call played on the big screen. My broken body on the gurney. My mother's cold voice. If she doesn't make it, just call me when it's over. Haven's laugh. The screenshot of my bloody face with her caption underneath. The courtroom went dead silent. A juror in the back actually gasped. Cashin laid the phone records on the bench. Haven had forwarded the photo to 7 different group chats within 4 minutes. One message read, "One less person stealing my spring break." The judge's pen stopped moving. She looked at my mother for a long, hard moment. "Mrs. Thane," she said, voice like ice. I have never heard a parent speak about their child this way. While that child was fighting for her life, temporary full custody was immediately transferred to Thaddeus Vane effective today. We'll see you back here for the permanent hearing. She banged the gavel so hard the sound echoed off the marble walls. 3 days later, Celiora was fired from her job at the South Carolina State Credit Union. Background checks are mandatory for anyone handling money, and medical neglect of a minor is an automatic disqualifier. Security escorted her out with a cardboard box. Haven's full-ride academic scholarship to the College of Charleston was revoked the same week. The admissions board said her conduct was not compatible with the values of the school. Suddenly, the private high school that had once admired her started whispering behind her back. Within a month, the James Island house went into foreclosure. Lucian's name was already off the deed. He had signed everything over to protect his money. Grandpa and I stayed in our little gray house. Every morning, the sun shone through the window and sparkled on the ocean waves. Grandpa made breakfast, soft foods I could eat, and we went fishing or just walked on the beach. We didn't need fancy vacations or big houses. We had each other, and that was enough. Every night he hummed the hymn, holding my hand while I fell asleep. The ocean never stopped moving. Neither did we. Mother and daughter moved into a small apartment near Savannah Highway. The paint was peeling off the walls, and the elevator didn't work, so we had to take the stairs every time. Haven didn't have a car anymore, so we had to walk or catch the bus. Celiora got a night job at a grocery store stocking shelves, so we could pay the rent. It was hard for her, and it was hard for us, but we managed. I started going to therapy. Twice a week, a van came to pick me up and take me to physical therapy at MUSC. Physical therapy was very hard at first. I had to learn how to climb stairs again, how to balance on a round exercise ball called a Bosa ball, and how to trust my own legs after the accident. Grandpa drove me to every single session. He would wait in the lobby, reading the same 3 fishing magazines over and over again until I finished. I would come out sweating, my legs shaking, and Grandpa would smile at me and ask, "Did you do your best today?" On Thursdays, I saw a trauma counselor named Dr. Amaris. Her office smelled like lavender, and it was small and calm. We talked about my nightmares, my anger, and the day I realized I didn't want to hear my mother's voice again. Grandpa would wait in the truck, windows down, listening to soft country music, never once complaining about the heat. Sometimes, when the pain in my hips got too loud, I would sit on the back deck and throw pieces of bread to the seagulls. Grandpa would bring me 2 sweet teas, and we would sit together, watching the tide go out. The waves would move slowly, and it felt like the ocean was helping me heal. Grandpa never tried to make my anger go away. He didn't tell me to stop being mad or sad. He just let me feel it, and that made me feel safe. By the end of the summer, I didn't need crutches anymore. I could use a cane for a while, then finally walk without anything at all. I still walked with a little limp, but the doctor said most of it would fade by my 18th birthday. One evening, I walked all the way to the end of Folly Pier and back without stopping. Grandpa met me halfway, carrying a blanket and a flashlight, even though the sun hadn't set yet. We sat on the sand, shoes off, letting the waves touch our toes. I leaned my head on his shoulder. "Thank you for staying," I said softly. "Nowhere else I'd rather be, baby girl," he said, kissing the top of my head. 7 months after the crash, the final trial day came. I walked into the courtroom without crutches, without a cane, and without a limp. The scar on my forehead was still pink, but I held my head high. Grandpa sat right behind me in his Sunday suit, the same one he wore to my dad's funeral. Celiora looked smaller than I remembered, her hair pulled back tight, holding a tissue she didn't use. Haven stared straight ahead, arms crossed so tightly that her knuckles were white. Cashin called me to the stand first. I swore an oath, sat down, and looked the judge in the eye. "Tell the court how it felt," he said, knowing my mother didn't come when I was in the hospital. I took a deep breath. Everyone in the room was waiting. It felt like the last piece of me that still believed I mattered just died on that table. I said. My voice didn't shake. I learned in one sentence that I was not important to her. And the person who said it was the same woman who used to read me bedtime stories. I told them about waking up to Grandpa's name on the Guardian line, about the single missed call I never answered, and about every night I fell asleep listening to the ocean instead of wondering why I wasn't enough. Celiora's lawyer tried to make her look like a victim. He said she was stressed, had lost her job, lost her house, and gone through a divorce. I didn't look at her once. When he finished, the judge asked if I had anything else to say. "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "I don't want her money. I don't want her apologies. I just want this to be over. I already have a family." The judge didn't take long. She came back in 20 minutes. Permanent termination of parental rights for Celiora Thane, effective immediately. Civil judgment in favor of the plaintiff and the hospital, $480,000. The James Island property will be sold to pay the debt. Mr. Thaddeus Vane is granted full legal adoption. This case is closed. The gavel hit the table, loud like a starting gun. Outside, reporters shouted questions. I ignored them all. I took Grandpa's arm, and we walked into the sunny October day together. 3 weeks later, the bank locked the big white house. A moving truck came for the few things Celiora and Haven decided to keep. They packed boxes into an old car and drove north on I-26, to somewhere cheaper, where nobody knew their names. I never asked where. They never tried to find me. That same month, the adoption papers arrived in the mail. I signed my new name, Aurelia Vane, for the first time. I cried harder than the day I woke up from the coma. Grandpa framed the certificate above the fireplace, right next to my dad's old service photo. I started my senior year at a small alternative school near Folly Beach. The classes were small, and the teachers actually cared. No one knew my story unless I told them. I made the honor roll every quarter and got accepted early to the College of Charleston, close enough to come home every night. Graduation day came, warm and windy. I wore a pale blue cap and gown, the same color as the walls Grandpa painted in my room. When they called my name, the whole senior class stood and cheered because everyone knew who had helped me. Grandpa waited at the bottom of the steps in his dress uniform, medals shining. I ran to him, threw my arms around his neck, and let him lift me off the ground like I weighed nothing. 5 years have passed since that Easter Sunday. I am 21 now, with a diploma in psychology on the wall. I work as a family trauma counselor at a nonprofit just over the bridge in Mount Pleasant. Every day I sit across from teenagers who think nobody will ever choose them, and I get to tell them they're wrong because someone chose me when my real family walked away. Grandpa turned 77 last month. He still mows the yard himself. He still catches more fish than any charter boat captain. He still makes the best shrimp and grits in the state. Our house on stilts is exactly the same. Wind chimes, singing porch swing, creaking coffee pot, always half full. My old room is still pale blue. His tackle room is still a bedroom because neither of us ever changed it back. We eat dinner on the deck most nights, watching dolphins chase fish in the surf. He calls me a baby girl once a day, usually when handing me a sweet tea. I still call him Grandpa. Nothing else feels right. Celiora and Haven left South Carolina 3 years ago. I never looked for them. They never looked for me. The silence is clean, final, and peaceful. Some people ask if I am angry. I'm not. Anger takes energy I decided to spend on living. Some ask if I forgive them. Forgiveness isn't mine to give. They never tried to earn it. What I do carry is gratitude, so much that it still surprises me. Gratitude for the man who slept in a vinyl chair for 18 nights. Gratitude for the retired chief who never missed a therapy appointment. Gratitude for the grandfather who made his house a home and his heart a safe place. Family isn't just people with your blood. Family is the person who stays when you're hurt. Family is the one who signs papers, holds your hand, and never makes you feel like a burden. Family is love, safety, and someone who never gives up on you. Grandpa is that family for me, and I will always be his baby girl.